Are you looking for, or do you need, a new opportunity to accelerate what you're doing? Are you looking for opportunity? Are you planning or hoping to accelerate at this phase? Now, honestly, at some phases you don't want to accelerate. You want to sort of hang on, hold on, settle down, consolidate, etc. But if you're looking for, how do we accelerate our growth? How do we sort of put a fire under it and light it up and really get it to grow rapidly? Listen in. A few years ago, I was up at Estes Park with Dr. Peter F. Drucker, sort of the leader in modern management theory. And he basically said two things that I don't think I'll ever forget. He said, number one, last year's unexpected success is next year's opportunity. It sounds like a simple little statement, but it exploded in my brain. Last year's unexpected success is next year's opportunity. That made perfect sense to me, and it was just, I could hardly sleep that night. But he said a second thing that was interesting. He said, staff will always resist the change required to take full advantage of the opportunity. You know what, I found that to be true as well. I was at a little church in the Midwest. It's a church about 650. That's not so little, it's just a good-sized church. And I was explaining this, and I said, what was unexpectedly successful for you last year? The youth pastor said, well, I know what I'd say. I said, what would you say? He said, we had every Friday night, this is the sort of a small town, it's a dull town, and he said there's nothing to do for teenagers. So he said, whenever we have an event on a Friday night, we'll have 500 kids show up. I said, fantastic. How many kids do you have coming to your youth group? He said, oh, about 100. I said, you have 100 kids in your youth group and 500 show up on a Friday night? Fantastic. How many have you got coming now? Oh, we stopped it. People laugh when I tell them this. I said, why'd you stop it? He said, that's my wife and my date night. I looked at him and said, change your dang date night. And bring in someone like a Josh McDowell or a youth speaker to sort of light up the local fairgrounds or something. If this makes sense to you, I'd like to show you just a couple things to get a feel for this. If you're ever looking to accelerate your program, what you want to do is look for opportunity, because opportunity is what accelerates what you're doing. And the way to get to identify the opportunity is with the 5 questions I'm about to teach you. It only takes 5 questions, and it'll uncover opportunities you never dreamed were there. And then the last word I'd like to teach you is scalable. These 5 questions really apply to any organization, anyone, anywhere, any country, at all levels. Let's start with the 5 questions up here. Assuming you want to accelerate and identify opportunity. The 5 questions are these. Number 1, what was, in fact, unexpected success last year? What was it that worked better than you thought it would? The reason it worked better than you thought it would is because you'd underestimated its potential. But what was it? What was the thing, the program, the person, what surprised you at how well it did? How well it sold? How many people responded? What was the concept, the theory, the product, the service that surprised you on how well it worked? That's your first question. Second question is, why is the staff resisting it? Because they are resisting it. They're explaining, well, we couldn't change this. Well, I wouldn't want to change my date night. Well, I don't think we could. What excuse is your staff using for not accelerating it, not focusing on that unexpected success and working into the plan next year in a bigger way? But before you accuse your staff too vehemently, ask yourself, why? Are you ready? Why are you resisting the change required to take full advantage of that opportunity? And be honest with yourself, because often the finger points inward. But then once you've identified it, and once you've identified why you or your team are resisting it, ask yourself this: what would we have to do to get to 10 times the result we saw last year? In other words, if it was unexpectedly successful, it's got a lot more potential than you were realizing. What would it take to move that to 10 times? By the way, often when you're explaining the unexpected success or defining what it was, put here, we expected this, but we got this. We expected 10 and we got 30, or whatever the numbers are. So you basically say, what would it take to see a result 10 times 30? If we were expecting 10, got 30, if it's that much potential, what would it take to move us to 300? And there's where your team brainstorms for an hour maybe on what changes would we have to make to get to 300. Because there's more potential there than you were assuming, or you wouldn't have been surprised by the result. The fourth question is, what would it take to take this idea national? In other words, if the idea is such a great idea, and if it works really well the second year, what would it take to have this become a national idea? Because if it works in your church or your EE group or your program or your company or your something, at a local level, ask yourself, would it work as well at a regional level? Or even a national level? And you begin to dream and see the potential, the opportunity we've got here. And then the fifth question is a kicker. It sort of shocks you, really. What is the international potential? What is the international potential? Because if it works in your local community, and if it works regionally, and it works nationally, why wouldn't it work just as well in other nations as well? And there are some ideas that you have in your lifetime that have that kind of potential. Is this one of them? And how would we go about developing it to see if it does have international potential? And the last question is, what is the potential not only international, but what is its potential for 50 plus years? In other words, it may take you, in a sense, a lifetime to help fully develop this idea. But it may be an idea that lasts for 50 years. Like, for example, in EE, when I first started working with EE in 1976, EE was my first consulting client. And shortly after that, I asked Archie Parrish, who was then the executive director, Archie, what's the essence of EE? How would you describe the essence of EE? He said, well, it's the two questions. It starts with the two questions. So I came back the next month and I said, Archie, I think you should develop the two questions on everything. I think that's your logo. I think it should be, first of all, a lapel pin, so that when a person saw it on an airplane, they would say, what are those two questions for? And it would just bridge right into the two questions and salvation. As you know, let's see, from 76 to today, that's a lot of hours, or a lot of years. The double question mark lapel pin I saw in Jim Engle this morning. So I say, there are a lot of ideas you may have that's simply an unexpected success. It has a 50-year potential internationally. Isn't that sort of exciting? Now, you may say, well, Bob, frankly, last year we didn't have such a great year. It was disappointing in many ways. Good news. Often, in the middle of a bad year, there was one thing that was unexpectedly successful. So look at that, feature it. Look, ask yourself the 5 questions. What was our unexpected success? It was right here. Even in a bad year, why are we resisting developing it? What if we took it to 300 instead of 10? What's the national implications? And what are the international implications for 50 years? You may have an idea that developed last year in your worst year ever that has 50-year implications internationally. You know what? One of the most exciting parts of this whole concept is its scalability. If you're the president of your nation watching this video, you can ask the same questions and get the same results. If you're a pastor of a church of 10 people, ask the same questions, you get the same results. No matter how big or small your organization is, if it's just you, let alone a church of 50,000, the same 5 questions hold. That's part of the excitement of it. The other thing is, you can make this a group exercise. You can take your personal executive team through it. You can take some what you would call ministry partners through it. And you say, as a ministry partner, what surprised you most about what we've done that impressed you? You'd like to get behind it. You can take ministry partners through it. You can take almost anyone through it. The same 5 questions as a group exercise. I would encourage you, if you're a team leader, to ask your staff at least once a quarter, to answer the question in their report to you. Because you know what? What you're going to find is that to them, an unexpected success is an annoyance, an intrusion, something they don't really want to deal with often. They see it that way, but when they report to you what was unexpectedly successful, you look at it and say, whoa, look at the potential here. Look at the opportunity here. They've seen it as an inconvenience. It's my wife and my date night. You see it as 5,000 kids at the fairgrounds. Don't forget that. Another thing to see is that the reality is that the least likely person to have a great idea can come up with a great idea in answer to these questions. You may have a janitor where you work who you say, you know, as you've watched us work, what surprised you at how well it's done this year? You may have a first year team member. Just ask them, what surprised you, how well it's done this year? They see something you may miss because to them it's new. But to you it's ho-hum, we've done that before, and yeah, it was a little better. But they say, I was surprised at how well that did. I was surprised how well that worked. I'm saying any single person on your team can identify an opportunity that could be for you an international idea for 50 years. Doesn't have to be a senior executive. One of the things that I appreciate about Steve Jobs, what people have reported about Steve Jobs at Apple, and whether it was true or not, he was supposed to have said, it isn't who said it, it's what they said. The newest person can have an idea that beats the senior vice president of Apple. That's true of EE as well. The newest staff person can spot an opportunity. I think I'd been with EE as a consultant for probably a month when we designed the double question mark pen. I didn't have to be here for 10 years to see something like that. So what you want to ask yourself is, how do I ask my team? How do I ask the people who are surrounding us what was unexpectedly successful? And just listen. You may listen to 5 people and not get a keeper idea. You may listen to 5 people and say, you know what? I don't see any potential there. And the 6th one, it came from the newest recruit, may blow your head away. You say, if that's the case, whoa, look at the potential of this thing. So, remember, opportunity is what accelerates your progress in the direction of your dreams. And what's more, not only can you use these 6 questions, you can teach every staff person you ever teach to use them to identify opportunities that they will encounter. And if you ever get to the point where you say, I think we're getting a little stale right now. I think we really need some fresh ideas here. These 5 questions are available to you 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year, for the rest of your life, to help you as you begin to try to accelerate your progress toward your God-given dreams.